So, what we're looking at today is this huge, high stakes technological showdown unfolding in the Middle East. There are some really dramatic new claims that Iran's latest missiles are seriously challenging one of the most sophisticated defense networks on the planet. And it all boils down to one massive, critical question that's been flying around after these recent attacks. Is Israel's legendary air defense system actually struggling to keep up with a brand new generation of weapons? Yeah, because that's the story coming straight from Iran. They're not just saying, hey, we had a few successful strikes. No, they're claiming a fundamental shift in the whole balance of power. They're suggesting their offensive tech is now a step ahead. So let's really get into it and unpack what's going on here. Okay, to really get a handle on these events, you have to see the bigger picture. These aren't just random, isolated incidents. They're all part of a much larger, coordinated effort that Iran has dubbed the True Promise campaign. This specific phase of the operation is codenamed True Promise 4, and it's a sustained, ongoing campaign. We're talking about a series of attacks using a whole mix of missiles and drones, and they're not just targeting Israel. They're also going after U.S. assets all across the region. And this persistence is absolutely key. The most recent barrage we're talking about was the 24th wave of this operation. Just think about that number. 24. That alone tells you how determined and continuous this whole effort has become. So here's the crucial question. What makes this 24th wave so different? Well, according to Iran, it all comes down to the hardware they're using. They're claiming a whole new arsenal is responsible for their supposed success. Iran's been pretty specific, naming several new systems like the Khorram Shafor, Fatah, Imad, and Ghadr. It's a mix of solid and liquid fuel designs, and each one supposedly has different capabilities and ranges. So this isn't just one new missile, it's like a whole new family of them. Now, here's a really interesting detail that came from media affiliated with the IRGC. They claimed that one missile hit Tel Aviv, but didn't actually detonate until several minutes after impact. If that's true, it would imply a much more sophisticated weapon, maybe something with a delayed fuse or a really specialized warhead. All right, and this is where things start to get really complicated. As you can probably guess, there are two completely different stories emerging from the battlefield. So let's take a look at the claims versus the counterclaims. On one side, you have an IRGC statement that's basically claiming a perfect score. Every single missile hit its intended target. But on the other side, Israeli media reported that at least one missile was intercepted, and, this is crucial, that there were no confirmed impacts in populated areas. Now, obviously, both of those statements can't be 100% true. And here's a piece of evidence that seems to muddy the waters even more. Despite all these claims of devastating strikes on tech hubs and military centers, the number of reported injuries was 0. That single fact really adds a huge layer of complexity to Iran's claims of total success, doesn't it? But then you have this piece of data, which really seems to support the idea that something has changed. Just look at the air raid warning times. Historically, people had between 4 to 8 minutes of warning. On the day of these attacks, though, that timeline shrank dramatically. It went from about 6 minutes down to 3, and in one case, sirens were going off just 1 minute after the alert. I mean, can you imagine? That's a terrifyingly short window for civilians to find shelter. Now, officials from Israel's Homefront Command do have an explanation for this. They say it isn't necessarily a failure of the system, but it could be due to other factors, like detecting the missile launch late, or the missiles themselves flying on weird, unusual trajectories that are just harder to predict. Either way you slice it, it suggests these new weapons are posing a whole new kind of challenge. So why is all this happening right now? Well, these attacks are being presented as part of a direct cycle of retaliation. And the language being used here is incredibly powerful. This is a direct quote from the IRGC, saying that revenge and blood vengeance are on the agenda. So this isn't being framed as just a strategic military operation. It's being presented as a deeply emotional, religiously charged mission of retribution. The official justifications are pretty layered. The immediate trigger was supposedly an Israeli strike on Iran's Mayabad airport. But it's also being framed as revenge for past martyrs and as a direct response to the United States military presence in the region. And that last point is so important. This campaign is not just aimed at Israel. The IRGC has released these really detailed claims of successful attacks on U.S. bases too, like Al Dhafra in the UAE and Al Udeid in Qatar. They list specific, high-value targets they claim to have destroyed and even claim to have killed American personnel in one of these attacks. So, when you pull it all together, what we're really watching is more than just a missile exchange. It's a high-stakes information war. On one side, you have this narrative of a new offensive supremacy, of game-changing technology that just can't be stopped. And on the other, you have a narrative of defensive resilience and successful interceptions. And that leaves us with this final, massive question. Are we actually seeing a real turning point here? A moment where advanced offensive missile technology is truly starting to outpace the incredibly complex and expensive defensive systems designed to stop them? Because the answer to that, well, it could reshape military strategy for years to come.